Hey, what is up everybody? It's Animac here for AnimeUproar, and today I will be ranking the top 10 strongest characters who have shown to be able to use more than one quirk. Whether it's stealing quirks, mimicking quirks, or imprinting multiple quirks on a single person, the Boku No Hero series has given us a bunch of extremely powerful characters who can use multiple quirks. And as you might imagine, they are some of the strongest characters in the entire series, so let's get into it. If you enjoyed the Boku no Hero content here on the channel and you want us to keep it going, please leave a like and comment. It only takes a second, but it helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you are new to AnimeUproar, or maybe you watch our videos but you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, do me a favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You really have to go through the trouble of subscribing, hitting that bell, and then selecting the option that says all. If you don't do that, you're still gonna miss a ton of our videos, even if you are subscribed. It's just how YouTube works. Big shout out to our AnimeUproar patrons who make long videos like this one possible. I will talk more about Patreon at the end of the video, but first, please be advised that this video will contain Boku no Hero manga spoilers. I will be referencing all of the available information in the manga, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. Just a heads up, even though the quirk One For All was created by combining two separate quirks, I will not be treating One For All itself as two quirks in this video. One For All became the quirk it is today only after two separate quirks had already combined. So because of that, I'm treating One For All as a single quirk, and someone who only used One For All, like for example All Might, will not be included in this list. However, anyone who was able to use One For All and another separate quirk at the same time is fair game. At number 10, we have the USG Nomu. The first multiple quirk user that we got to see up close is the monstrous Nomu that appeared alongside the League of Villains during the USG arc. This Nomu was formerly a normal person who was experimented on by All For One and Dr. Ujiko, and whose genes were spliced with the genes of multiple different people in order to create an obedient fighting machine. This Nomu is essentially a mindless slave whose only purpose in life is to follow Shigaraki's orders without question. But even though he lacks intelligence and free will, the USG Nomu is still extremely powerful and ruthless. As a result of the experimentation conducted on him by Ujiko and All For One, this Nomu is able to use two incredibly strong quirks: Shock Absorption and Super Regeneration. Shock Absorption allows him to absorb the force of all attacks that come his way, although there is a limit to how much damage he can take. Super Regeneration allows him to recover almost instantly from even the most severe physical attacks. This Nomu was designed with the specific intention of defeating All Might, and it demonstrated unbelievable speed and strength as it went toe-to-toe with All Might himself. And All Might was at the time still the #1 pro hero. Although All Might ultimately succeeded in defeating this Nomu, he was forced to put in a lot of effort to take the monster down, and it was clear that the other pro heroes like Aizawa didn't stand a chance against this Nomu. That said, this Nomu is not the strongest Nomu that All For One and Ujiko would ultimately create, and even though he was a formidable challenge for All Might, at this point in the story, All Might was far from his prime. For this reason, the USG Nomu comes in at number 10 on our list. At number 9, we have Himiko Toga. When we first found out about Toga's quirk, there was no indication that she had the ability to use multiple quirks. Toga's quirk, called Transform, allowed her to physically transform herself into another person if she is able to consume enough of that person's blood. She could mimic all of the physical details of that person's appearance, and she could mimic their voice, but that was the extent of her abilities. Well, she could also briefly make herself practically invisible, but that was it. Transform was certainly a useful quirk, especially when it came to stealth operations like spying, going undercover, and all that kind of stuff. But it was never a strong offensive quirk, and it required a large amount of blood to work, so it wasn't the easiest quirk to activate. Nevertheless, in chapter 226, when Toga is injured and on the brink of death, she suddenly experiences a quirk awakening. At this point, Toga suddenly becomes capable of not only transforming into someone physically, but she also learns to actually use that person's quirk. Toga is able to transform into Ochako and use Ochako's quirk Zero Gravity. What's more, she is able to use the quirk very effectively against a large number of enemies at the same time. It seems that after the evolution of her quirk, Toga is able to copy and use the quirk of someone that she has transformed into, as long as she has seen the quirk in action and knows how it works. Needless to say, while the ability to change her physical appearance into someone else was useful for spying and intel gathering, the power to also copy that person's quirk changes the game completely. As long as Toga consumes enough blood from multiple people, she is able to transform into those people at will, and she can use her awakened quirk to also mimic their quirks in battle. Imagine if she kept some of Twice's blood stashed away somewhere. Now imagine if Toga ends up using Sad Man's Parade. Toga is a total wild card in Boku No Hero, and after the awakening of her quirk, we simply cannot underestimate her. But at the same time, the requirements for Toga to use her quirk can be extremely challenging to meet, and that is why I can't rank her higher than number 9 on this list. At number 8, we have Nana Shimura. Nana was the 7th user of One For All, and since we know that One For All is an accumulation type quirk, we know that it must have already been quite strong by this point. One For All was already possessed by 6 users prior to being inherited by Nana, meaning that it must have accumulated a lot of power over the course of multiple decades. We know how insanely strong All Might was, and Nana was the user just before him, and she was also his mentor, so it's safe to assume that she was incredibly strong as well. On top of One For All, Nana also had a second quirk, the original quirk that she was born with, which is Float. Float allows the user to levitate through the air, so essentially, Nana could use One For All and also fly while doing it. Although we know that she was not strong enough to defeat All For One, Nana definitely deserves a spot on this list. All Might would not have become the legendary hero that he is today if Nana hadn't been such an extremely strong and effective mentor. At number 7, we have Daigoro Banjo. Daigoro Banjo was another former One For All user, and the 5th user to be precise. I chose to include Banjo on this list because I think that his original quirk, Black Whip, works extremely well in combination with One For All. And we've already seen that firsthand after Deku unlocks Black Whip and then learns to use it with One For All. Since Daigoro Banjo is the 5th user, One For All itself would have been fairly strong by this point, although not as strong as it would become later. But because Black Whip is such a powerful and versatile quirk, I decided to put Banjo ahead of Nana. While her second quirk, Float, is certainly very useful, I think Black Whip could be even more useful in combination with One For All. That is just my personal opinion, of course, and it is totally possible that Nana was stronger than Banjo. But I just think that someone who has had an entire lifetime to master Black Whip would be able to do so much with it. From attacking and restraining opponents, to defending and evading attacks, to climbing buildings, to launching yourself into the air, there is just so much that Black Whip can do. And that is why Banjo is at number 7 on our list. At number 6, we have the Highend Nomu. The Highend Nomu are on a completely different level from all the other Nomu in many ways. They are much stronger. They don't just follow orders, they are actually strategic and intelligent, and on top of that, they are able to use as many as 6 different quirks. Now, it is difficult to single out just one Highend Nomu as being the strongest because what we've seen from them so far has been quite limited. Hood is the Highend Nomu that we got to see in action most thoroughly during the battle against Endeavor and Hawks. But it is quite possible that some of the other Highends, such as the female Nomu, are actually stronger than Hood. The female Nomu, also known as Woman, was released by Ujiko along with 4 other Highend Nomu at a time of emergency. If these Nomu had stayed in their tubes for a longer period of time, they might have emerged even stronger. Moreover, the female Nomu showed more intelligence and more strategic prowess than Hood, in my opinion, so it is quite possible that she would have been able to defeat Hood. But the female Nomu's power is hard to scale because we only saw her during one battle which involved multiple Nomu and multiple heroes all going at each other. That said, even if we just go by Hood's battle against Endeavor and Hawks, it is clear that a high end like Hood definitely belongs on this list. Hood was so strong that he was able to tear down the sides of entire buildings in a single strike. And Endeavor, the current #1 pro hero, acknowledged that Hood was stronger than him. The only reason why Endeavor was able to come out on top at the end is because he had the help and support of the current #2 pro hero, Hawks. So it was only the combined strength of the two strongest pro heroes that finally brought Hood down. At number 5, we have the incredibly powerful hero waifu turned villain waifu turned maybe hero waifu again, Lady Nagant. Lady Nagant is a former hero who was imprisoned inside Tartarus after killing the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission. She escaped Tartarus after All For One's big prison break, and she is so strong that Hawks warned Deku to immediately run away if he ever meets her, meaning that Deku should not even try to fight against her because she is just too strong. Now, to be fair, Hawks isn't aware of the full extent of Deku's power, and Deku keeps getting stronger and stronger with each passing chapter, but the fact that Hawks issued this type of warning to Deku before Deku even met Lady Nagant tells us just how notorious and powerful she is. Considered to be a top-tier assassin, Lady Nagant's reputation even impressed All For One, and he recruited her to capture Deku for him. She is the best long-range fighter in all of Japan, maybe even in the world, and even Snipe admits that he can't hold a candle to Lady Nagant. Her original quirk is called Rifle, and it allows her to generate a large long-range rifle from her right elbow. She can also extend a piece of flesh from that rifle up to her eye and use it as a scope. Using strands of her hair, Lady Nagant can create all different types of bullets that she can then place into the rifle and fire off at a range of up to 3 kilometers. This seems to be the best long-range quirk in the MHA world, and thanks to her special bullets that she can make herself, Lady Nagant can do absolutely crazy things like make her bullets curve around buildings and hit seemingly impossible targets. Lady Nagant also possesses a second quirk that was given to her by All For One in order to help her complete her mission to capture Deku. This quirk is Airwalk, which allows the user to levitate through the air. As you can imagine, being the world's greatest long-distance shooter and then being able to fly through the air and get a bird's eye view on your opponent whenever you want is a killer combination. And while I don't agree with Hawks that Deku must run away from Lady Nagant because she is too strong for him, I think that Deku has proven otherwise, especially as he continues to master his new quirks. I do think that Lady Nagant definitely belongs in the top 5 strongest multiple quirk users in MHA. At number 4 is none other than Deku. As the 9th and current one-for-all user, Deku has the advantage of using the quirk now that it is at its strongest ever. In fact, Deku inherited the quirk at a crucial moment in its evolution, and as a result, he is able to manifest the original quirks of all of the previous one-for-all users in addition to being able to use one-for-all itself. And if that wasn't enough, all the additional quirks that Deku gets to unlock are even stronger now than they were when they were being used by their original users. And this is because One-For-All's growing strength has made these additional quirks even stronger. As of the making of this video, Deku has unlocked Black Whip, Float, Danger Sense, Smokescreen, and Fajin. And not only has Deku unlocked these quirks, but he has already shown a truly impressive ability to combine the different quirks in extremely effective ways in battle. Deku is learning quickly and getting stronger with each passing chapter, and I am sure that eventually he will be able to climb his way to the very top of this list, but for now he remains at number 4. At number 3, we have Gigantomachia. Gigantomachia is All For One's former bodyguard and one of the strongest characters in the entire series. He is fiercely loyal to his master, All For One, and to his master's successor, Tomura Shigaraki. As his name suggests, Gigantomachia can increase his size until he becomes a genuine giant. And in this gigantic state, he can take down entire mountains and entire city blocks on his own. On top of having insane and utterly superhuman power, speed, and stamina, Gigantomachia also has at least 7 different quirks. Gigantomachia's only known weakness is that he can hardly think for himself. He requires orders from his master in order to carry out a task, and the only known task that he can accomplish without being ordered to is to come protect his master. Along with being able to become gigantic, he can also completely block out pain, he can convert his morale into stamina, he can enhance his senses, he can harden his muscles, and he can grow giant claws from his hands, and probably a lot more. During the epic war arc, it took literally dozens of heroes and hero students to take this man down, and even then all they could do is sedate him. He also managed to kill multiple pro heroes in the process while injuring many others. Gigantomachia's biggest weakness is that he doesn't really have a will of his own, and unless he gets those direct orders from his master, or unless he believes that he is acting to protect his master, he isn't really a threat. But at the same time, when he does have the proper motivation, Gigantomachia is a force of nature. He is a walking natural disaster, and he is nearly unstoppable. At number 2, we have All For One. All For One is the greatest villain in the history of Japan, and he is an absolutely ruthless mastermind with an incredibly overpowered quirk. All For One, the quirk, allows its user to steal the quirks of others and then use those quirks himself, and this includes combining multiple quirks inside one person to create extremely effective offensive and defensive techniques. All For One can combine multiple stolen quirks in order to create more powerful super quirks that would never have occurred naturally. And he was even able to slow down the aging process thanks to a quirk he copied from Dr. Ujiko. All For One is able to forcibly activate the quirks of others, and he can also transfer stolen quirks into other people, allowing him to create his own army of villains with superpowered combo quirks. Gigantomachia is of course one of All For One's creations, as are the Nomu. All For One has incredible intelligence, generations of experience, and a countless number of quirks at his disposal. Not to mention the army of multiple quirk users that he himself is able to create. This makes him one of the strongest characters in the entire series, and the second strongest multiple quirk user in Boku No Hero. Now, before we get into the strongest multiple quirk user, here are some honorable mentions. First up, we have the third One For All user. I think that his original quirk, Fa-Jin, is such a good companion quirk to One For All. Fa-Jin is basically a major buff for One For All itself. You can use Fa-Jin to make your One For All based attacks much stronger and faster. But with that said, One For All itself was nowhere near as strong back then as it is now, so that is why the third user is an honorable mention rather than being on the list himself. The same goes for all of the other One For All users. They were all strong and they all deserve an honorable mention, but I don't think that they quite make the list based on their original quirks and based on the strength of One For All at the time. I also want to give a quick shout out to some of the villains from the first 2 MHA movies, including Wolfram, Nine, and Chimera, who all used more than one quirk. I chose not to include them on this list, not because they aren't strong enough to be here, but because it is basically impossible to power scale them in any meaningful way. The movies are not really canon, at least not fully, and while there are some references to characters from the movies in the actual manga, there are also some clear inconsistencies which make it impossible to accurately compare the movie villains to the canonical characters. Finally, I'd like to give an honorable mention to Shoto Todoroki. I didn't include him on the list because he technically has only one quirk, but that quirk consists of 2 completely different powers that can be used separately. So you could definitely make an argument for Shoto being a multiple quirk user. Also, I guess Monoma has potential, but he has a long way to go. And the absolutely strongest multiple quirk user at this point in the story is the monster that is Awakened Shigaraki. In my opinion, Shigaraki started out as a pretty mediocre villain early on in the story, but over 300 chapters later, he has become an entirely different person. He is so much stronger now than he was at the beginning that he is essentially a totally different villain. Don't get me wrong, Shigaraki has always been very intelligent and analytical, and he's always had an overwhelming hatred for the Hero Society because of what he went through as a child. This hatred imbued Shigaraki with incredible willpower. He will stop at nothing to destroy the Hero Society. And this exceptional willpower is one of the main reasons why All For One took such a great interest in Shigaraki in the first place. After decades of trying to figure out a way to steal One For All For One came to the conclusion that One For All can in fact be stolen. but it can only be stolen by someone with overpowering hatred and unfathomable willpower. Someone who can subdue the vestiges of the former One For All users and force the quirk to bend to his will. All For One believes that Shigaraki is the one who can make this happen. As I mentioned, Shigaraki has undergone a massive transformation over the past few arcs of the story. A transformation that is both physical and psychological. First, he was able to awaken the true power of his quirk, Decay. When we first meet him, Shigaraki is able to only disintegrate something that he touches with all 5 of his fingers, and it took some time for that disintegration to actually run its course. But after his quirk awakened to its true power, the decaying became instantaneous, and it could also spread beyond the person or object that Shigaraki was actually touching directly. The decay could now spread to multiple enemies and destroy them all at once, and the quirk's ability was further boosted after Shigaraki underwent Ujiko's body modifying procedure. The procedure made Shigaraki much stronger physically, and it also made him capable of decaying practically a third of an entire city with one attack. Shigaraki now also has more control of his decay, and he can seemingly decide what he wants decayed and what he wants spared. Ujiko's procedure has also drastically increased Shigaraki's speed and stamina, which is why he is now on a completely different level of power than he was before. But this is a list about multiple quirk users, and Ujiko's procedure had another important effect. It transferred the original version of the quirk, All For One, onto Shigaraki, along with a bunch of other quirks that the villain All For One had stolen in the past. These quirks include Super Regeneration, Ragdoll's former quirk Surge, Air Cannon, Radio Waves, that red tendril quirk known as Rivet Stab, and who knows how many more. And despite being a newly minted multiple quirk user, Shigaraki has already demonstrated an incredible ability to use these quirks together in order to fight multiple top tier heroes on his own. To be fair, Ujiko's procedure was interrupted before it could be completed, so the new Shigaraki is not actually as strong as he could have been, but he is still almost certainly the strongest character at this point in the story. He can destroy large chunks of a city with a single attack, he can take on a large number of top tier pro heroes on his own, and he has the potential to become even stronger if the villains can figure out a way to complete Ujiko's procedure. There are several reasons why I believe that Shigaraki is even stronger than All For One in his prime. This includes Shigaraki's newly awakened Decay quirk, which All For One did not possess. It also includes the Super Regeneration quirk, which All For One only came across after he was already permanently injured by All Might. On top of that, the procedure that Ujiko conducted on Shigaraki is far more advanced than anything he could have done for All For One back in All For One's prime. And of course, Shigaraki's hatred and willpower are presumably even greater than All For One's. Because as we know, All For One never could find a way to steal One For All himself, but he believes that Shigaraki will be able to do it. Now, it is important to mention that All For One's plan is to perfect Shigaraki's body and then take it over from the inside using All For One's quirk factor, which somehow retains his own consciousness within it. But whether this plan succeeds or not, Shigaraki is at this moment the strongest multiple quirk user in the story, and almost certainly the strongest character in the story, period. Now let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with this list? And if not, no hard feelings, just let me know in the comments what your own list would look like. If you enjoyed this Boku No Hero video and you want to see more in the future, just leave a like and comment. It only takes a second, but it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you're new to the channel, or maybe you watch our videos but you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, do me a favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar. A big thank you to all of our AnimeUproar patrons for making videos like this one possible. Special thank you to the absolute mad lad and biggest lifetime donator, Alpha Sigma, disciple of Lord Twigo himself. And I can't forget all of our The One tier patrons, the ones who rise above all other clans, including Ingrata, Pate Hefa, Aljatal, Dr. Courtman, The Toasted Chi, Emperor Otaku, Spidey Life Tunnel, Tungsten Tarkus, Baked Buddhist, Cody Hebert, and Monkey D. Quilly. Finally, thank you also to our Pro Hero tier patrons, including the one and only Gilgamesh, the Red-Haired Raven, Angel Cruz, Anatoly Kazatsky, Very Gucci, Alicia Akhtar, Bonnie Parks, Sino Camille Water, Joanne Garcia, Ted No Ted, Fatboy Games, Corey McGowan, Metal Mama, Deadly Saint, and Soul Ray Slice and Dice. If you enjoy our videos and you feel that they provide value to you, consider supporting us on Patreon. Even a single dollar will give you access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and your name will appear in our videos along with these legendary people. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!